Our story begins with Laura, a dangerous and manipulative alien disguised as an attractive dark-haired woman, who targets lonely men and seduces them into a dark void, only to feed the cruel desires of her species. She answers to an alien figure disguised as a male motorcycle rider who tracks her steps like a hound. The hectic opening shows Laura vocalizing pronunciation patterns. She practices pretty hard for her mission on Earth. Shortly after that, a crazy biker stops on a darkened road and walks into the dark bushes. He comes back carrying an unconscious woman. The next thing we see is Laura putting on the unconscious woman's clothes. She's caught up in trivial details, like a tiny ant. She's ready to go for a drive, impersonating a real human being. The crazy biker leaves as she enters the car. Laura goes shopping in an attempt to blend in among the crowd and to get to know human habits, like putting on makeup or how to commute around the city. She is observant that way. She drives around, looking for something called M8, and after chatting with a passerby, she follows his direction, only to stop again to ask for directions from another guy. Both men tell her they're going somewhere to meet people, so she just lets them go. A third guy appears, and the chat goes as she expects. The man is a loner and accepts her ride invitation. The man vanishes from the car, and Laura keeps on hunting. She finds other men and allures them into her van. Sexy and dangerous games work pretty well for her, but not for them. She uses their love for women to her advantage and traps them in some kind of darkened void, where they sink until their bodies fade away. Then, she goes back to her life as an alien in disguise, preying on lonely and clueless men. She doesn't look pleased or happy. Maybe she just hasn't mastered the skills yet, but she keeps on observing. On the following day, Laura goes to the beach looking for a new victim and meets a Czech man, but she wasn't expecting to witness an accident. A woman cries for help as she drowns. Her husband tries to save her, but the violent waves carry him too. The Czech surfer runs to help them, but the girl disappears among the waves, and the surfer passes out from exhaustion. The sole survivor of this horrendous accident is a baby that cries desperately all by himself, back at the sandbanks. The new circumstances force her to carry the unconscious man all the way to her van. The baby stays there, alone. Meanwhile, the crazy and silent biker packs his stuff from a tent and shows up at the beach, where the baby still cries desperately and alone. He picks something up and leaves, without the baby. Later that night, Laura chases more prey, this time unsuccessfully. Out of the blue, she's surrounded by a horde of drunk women, who take her straight to a club filled with sweaty and drunk people. The guy she was pursuing approaches her and offers her a drink. He goes straight to the dark void with her. Now, we see his perspective as completely aerial, quiet, and terrifying. Another man stands next to him, as he's consumed by some kind of force. The new guy watches the floating skin scene, petrified, and can't do anything but wait for his turn. Confusing bright lights dance around as the ritual ends. Laura keeps on driving around, looking for men to prey on. She picks the most crowded areas in town, and always manages to find some lonely guy who's about to have an unfortunate ending. After some time, she stands still in a dark alley as the mysterious biker analyzes her as if he was checking up on her status. An unexpected stumble on a sidewalk keeps Laura's face on the ground, until 3 or 4 men come to her aid, and then she leaves. She has a long road ahead of her when it comes to social skills. The lively streets overwhelm her senses that evening, but soon she sets off on a new hunting spree. However, before she draws this young guy's attention, her car is attacked by a crazy gang that tries to rob her. That's a human experience she's not familiar with, so she stares at the violent young men trying to break into her van. Seconds later, she drives away. The night is cold, and the streets are empty, but Laura sits tight and waits for some poor men to pass by her. A man in a hoodie answers her questions, and, as usual, she invites him in. The man has a unique physical condition that makes his face completely deformed. She doesn't back away as people normally do, and chats with him on their way to a supermarket. Much to her surprise, he doesn't fall into her trap very easily, so they talk a bit more as she tries to persuade him to touch her face. She finally invites the 26-year-old man to her place, and off they go. He's not a guy who is easy to hypnotize, not like the others, but he goes down into the void, just like every other man who entered her car. Mission accomplished once again, but on her way out of the abandoned building where she feasts on her prey, she stops and stares at a mirror. The next thing we know, she comes out of it with the supermarket man and sets him free without his belongings. As usual, the crazy biker shows up, but this time he's pissed off as he breaks into a house, shoves something or someone into the trunk of a car, and leaves with it. Meanwhile, Laura stands in the midst of a dense fog in the middle of nowhere, contemplating her first existential crisis, in a complete state of confusion. This is the first time she actually questions her alien nature and what it entails to be human. She wanders around the vast landscape. She's now on the run. She stops by a nice little restaurant and tries a chocolate cake for the first time, but the experience is a disaster, so she leaves. As she walks away, fate puts another man in her way. He waits at a bus stop and tells her the bus is coming soon. She decides to wait for it. Up to this point, it is clear to see that she's questioning her own nature and action, and the quiet man from the bus stop notices and offers his help. She takes a while to answer, but accepts his help, and they go to a grocery store together. They walk to his house together, and she doesn't hide her shock as she sees a neighborhood like that for the first time. They watch TV together in his living room, but Laura doesn't get the appeal of it. He doesn't talk much, and neither does she. The household experience brings more questions to her mind as she gets in touch with different human experiences. The man seems nice and gets a bedroom ready for her. The moment she sees a big mirror, she stares at her female figure for the very first time. At another point in the city, the crazy biker joins a group of more crazy bikers and rushes off, looking for the runway alien. As if the whole situation wasn't strange enough, the quiet man and Laura go out for a walk and stop by an old castle, where she walks on a staircase, also for the first time. The deeper they go downstairs, the darker and quieter the place gets. Meanwhile, the crazy biker sprints on the highway, trying to find her. Laura and the quiet guy have a romantic moment together back at his place, and the suspense rises. Will she take him to the void? Their hot moment intensifies, but ends abruptly the moment she realizes she's not a human being, because the body she has doesn't function like a real one. She's disappointed and runs into the woods. A bald man gets in her way down the deep forest and gives her some instructions, since she's all by herself. It looks like his intentions aren't good, but seconds later, the chat is over and he leaves. Laura spends some time in the forest until she finds a little cottage made of stones. The sign on the door reads that campers are welcome anytime, so she comes in and gets some rest. The howling wind outside sounds threatening, and so does the bald man, who broke inside the cottage and attacked Laura in her sleep. It seems like she has become the prey now, as she storms out of that place and hides in the woods. She walks around a little and finds 2 trucks loaded with logs and tries to steal one of them, but the bald man sees her and runs after her. She's in real danger again as he reaches her. She's powerless and can't run from him. Part against her will, but is shocked by the unexpected aftermath. Her skin, the human skin she embodies, is now deteriorating. She loses the identity that was hers for a while and looks completely lost. The bald man that had run away when he saw she wasn't human comes back quietly and throws gasoline on her and sets her on fire. Laura runs away, but the fire is too strong and she falls down in the middle of the snowy forest. The crazy biker keeps looking for her, but has no clues to her whereabouts. Laura's real body, the alien figure, gives up and turns into ashes. She probably ended her life a little more human than when she first appeared in the movie.